Welcome to the TravelPulse podcast, your go-to listening for everything travel. Here are your TravelPulse hosts, Eric Bowman and Dan Callahan.
Hello and welcome back to the TravelPulse podcast. You guys downloaded, you listened, and we thank you. I'm your host, Eric Bowman, managing editor of TravelPulse.com, joined by my co-host, Dan, the digital man, also a comedian, Callahan. That's a lot of rhyming there.
It is. That is. Dan is here. I am alive, almost well, but I am here and glad to be back.
Yes, Dan is recording from HQ up in New Jersey, and I am down south in Athens, Georgia, aka the greatest college town in the world. So today's episode is brought to you by my love for the window seat. Man, I love the window seat. I will never stop taking pictures of the window seat. Dan, do we have any additional sponsors today?
Other than your view from the window seat, from the sounds of me, I think it should be sponsored by Flonase, maybe amoxicillin, any type of antibiotic really is who it's brought to you by today, as you can tell by my a bit of a cold and real jazz station voice here that you probably hear. So I'm just all jacked up on Flonase right now. So that's pretty much what we're going to run with. I'll reach out to them about sponsorships. However, coming into 2020 here, something that we're excited to announce is that we are going to be working with different types of sponsors. So if you're interested, whether you're a travel agent, travel supplier, and you want us to talk to you, whether it's an interview or just do an ad read, we're going to be opening that wide up in 2020. If you want any additional info on doing that with us, our email is podcast@travelpulse.com. Feel free to reach out and we'll definitely work with you on that. We'd love to bring any type of travel products, information, anything you want to the listeners out there of our podcast. So it'll be a fun year in 2020, and we'll talk more about that and things to come, tips and advice and so on throughout the episode today.
Absolutely, yeah. And while we wish Dan and better this time of year, that is unfortunately how it goes with winter travel woes. It's been impacting holiday travel a little bit here and there. Just that time of year. And we'll touch on winter travel and things to do in our January podcast as well, coming up as the winter season gets in full swing in the new year. But first, we're going to talk about what's been trending recently in the world of travel. And we touched on this last show, but we have an update now. So the Boeing 737 MAX was pushed back even further. American and Southwest have pushed it back to April as of right now, December 23rd when we're recording this podcast. United has pushed it back to June. So it's going to be a while before the plane takes off again, and it's fair to question if it ever will at this point. And we also recently had some changes at the Boeing leadership. Isn't that right, Dan?
Yeah, that actually just came out today. Their CEO, this is December 23rd, the recording date. Their CEO, Dennis Muhlenberg, stepped down there after a brutal year working for the manufacturer. So they're going to have some leadership changes up at the top there. I know their board of directors said that they named a new current chairman, is now the new CEO and president effective January 13th. So he seems pretty excited to step into that role, saying that I am pleased that he's going to take some of his deep industry experience and a proven track record of strong leadership. Well, hopefully that strong leadership and industry experience can carry over to doing some software upgrades there. I guess Christmas came early for everybody that has hated what's going on with Boeing this year because their CEO is out. He will not be receiving that fat leadership bonus of probably a few hundred G's this year. So everybody who has been disrupted by that might be pleased to hear that. And hopefully overall, this entire thing is going to get cleared up. Whether or not they continue the production of these 737 MAXs, I believe we talked about that on Travel Pulse, Eric. Are they halting the overall production of those?
It's just halted until 2020, so it's all up in the air at this point. Who really knows?
That could be, I guess we'll see, but they say they're working hard to create the future of aviation. So I guess it is yet to be seen whether that's going to carry into 2020. Hopefully there'll be a lot less cancellations and havoc amongst people trying to book flights. I know I ran into an issue twice, and I can't say I fly all that much as probably some people out there listening to this. I might be once or twice flying a month. But I had two issues that really did change some of my plans, going to Cancun back in the summer and then also scheduling my honeymoon. I know we talked talked about that in the last episode. But yeah, I mean, the overall goal, I think, would be clearing this up. And I know it's been frustrating because it's like, hey, we're going to have these up in the air by October. All right, now it's going to be like by the end of the year. All right, now it's going to be like by the beginning of 2020. And then it's just like, who knows? We're just going to halt production and, figure it out after the new year, after we, give everybody their bonuses and stuff. So we'll see what happens. That's where we'll leave it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Travel issues happened far and wide a lot this year. Most recently, 2 Carnival cruise ships collided in Cozumel. One was docked, the other came in and just clipped it. So was a wild story over the weekend. I got a lot of people talking. Rough go for Carnival. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured in that. But it's not the first time we've had some wild cruise incidents, or really just travel-related incidents throughout 2019. Earlier this month, Una World delayed the debut of its Nile River cruise ship because of a fire. Earlier this year, you had Viking Sky had the engine issues, and over 1,000 passengers and crew were evacuated via helicopter. A Viking River cruise crashed into a tourist boat in Budapest in May. In June, an MSC cruise liner crashed into Una World riverboat in Venice. And in early October, this was a wild one, passengers actually staged a mutiny and protest on board the Norwegian Spirit, complaining of stale food, overflowing toilets. They missed ports because of weather. So it's wild stories all year. And we also had some crazy ones in the air too, right, Dan?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is no shortage of absolute insanity in the air. I'm actually, somewhat, as much as I don't want to run into any issues on a plane, I'm surprised I've never had any incidents of the ones that we cover, at least, because they seem like they happen a lot, and I've never actually seen anything. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, just recently, a week ago, and this was one of those interesting headlines you come across the desk, but a drunk passenger was taped to the seat after he attempted to storm the cockpit. And I know this was a source to the Mirror, a UK publication. Is that where this actually? It was in Russia, right, Eric?
Yeah, it was actually in Russia that it happened, but. Crazy stories like that. People try to open the plane doors in midair, and it's like that door's not going anywhere. Just stop. People are ridiculous. So I think you kind of jinxed yourself there, Dan. You're going to be screwed in 2020 because you said you hadn't had any incidents midair. So you're screwed for 2020, man.
Yeah, I'm just at this point just hoping something happens. It'll at least be a little entertaining. As long as I'm not on a tight schedule, I am open to somebody like this guy being described as a wild bear by one witness aboard the flight. So if there's any wild bears that are going to try and attempt to get into the cockpit and then get taped down into a business class seat, I'd be glad to get this on video and send it over to Eric so they can run an article about it. It's a little, he wanted to have a word with the captain, demanded to have a word with the captain. I mean, and one of the things, and I know we actually have talked about it a bit in the past, a lot of airlines are getting really frustrated with airport bars because people, and I know it happens when I'm doing like a guy's trip or a fun little getaway or something, as soon as people get through security and they get into the airport near their terminal and they have a little bit of time, people just want to get wasted. And I've never had good experiences with either being hungover or drinking a little bit before a flight, but I know a lot of airlines get so mad at these bars because they know people have to leave eventually. It's not like you're at a bar in the middle of a city somewhere and people are just getting absolutely hammered and you have no idea what to do with these people. Here, they have to get up to go make their flight. So they don't really, I know a lot of places, not all, really pay attention too much to over-serving people. And then those people, they'll get on a plane where there's a lot of rules and regulations they have to follow. So there's a bit of an issue there. And I'm wondering if enough of these incidents are going to happen before airport bars something's going to happen. Where they're going to have to do something about it. Because I know it said here in some of the statistics, in 2017, 1 out of every 1,053 flights had an incident such as this, disruptive passengers. And that was up from about 1 in every 1,400 flights in 2016. So it seems to be a growing trend and a growing problem. So I'm wondering, and I'm curious to see if in 2020 or even years beyond, if this is going to become such a problem that somebody has to change something.
We shall see. I do know that the airport beer is highly ranked among beers out there, where we have vacation beer, at-home beer, back deck beer, grilling beer. The airport beer ranks highly. So yes, they open up super early and people just get right to it, sadly. But hands down, the worst passenger of 2019 has to go to the lady who left her baby at the gate. Don't know if she was drunk. Who knows? If she got on the plane took off. She realized she forgot her baby. Forced the plane to turn back around. So hands down, that was the worst air passenger of 2019, no doubt.
Wow. So they've actually turned the plane around so that she can go back and get her baby that she left at the gate?
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Just fly to the next destination and, sorry, lady, forget your baby? No. So they came back. It was it was overseas, I think Saudi Arabia. So it was not here in the U.S., but still the worst air travel passenger in the world for 2019.
Wow, that definitely has to get my vote for that as well. I don't know how you could possibly do that unless it was on purpose, which would be a much larger issue. But I wonder if they turned the flight around. They obviously must have gotten some intel or information that she left the baby at the gate. Where did they draw the line of what you forgot at the gate is worth turning the plane around for? Obviously, a baby, I mean, that puts so many other people out of there. You would think that they would have her deal with it when they landed it or something like that and made sure the baby was safe. But, like, would they do that if you left, like, your dog back there? You left, like, a bunch of classified files? Like, where would they draw the line is what I would want to figure out.
Interesting take, Dan. I would have to say just baby. Yeah, human child. If you forget your grandma, I don't know, man. That's
I mean, would they do that for grandma? I mean, you see a lot of people, they get put in a wheelchair, separate from a family, and they may bring them to the wrong gate. We've seen and covered some stories like that. Would they do it for grandma? Would they do it for a dog? Would it get down to, is it like, those purse dogs that people carry around? I see more dogs in airports now more than ever before. So I can only imagine the amount of different things like that would happen. But was that the pilot's call? Like, oh, it's a baby. Like, let's do it. Let's turn this thing around. Or where would they say, no, we're just going to continue? You're like, who would make that call and where would they draw the line? We're going to figure this out in 2020 as well, Eric.
We have to, yes. But yes, issues and accidents do occur from time to time. So that's why it's always wise to have travel insurance and work with a trusted travel advisor. We'll be speaking to an advisor later in the show to get you some tips on 2020 air travel, finding cheap deals, and also to touch on Dan's recent trip to Antigua. But speaking of advisors, business is booming right now for them. And cruising is still a huge aspect of that. And we touched on, accidents do happen with cruises, but for the most part, yeah, travelers are really big into cruising right now. The American Society of Travel Advisors, ASTA, their annual study of how America travels, they shows advisors are reporting higher annual gross sales, and they're also relying on cruise sales, with 37% of independent advisors who were surveyed noting that they received more of their annual sales this year from cruises. Airline ticket sales are also up too, with U.S.-based agencies reporting $91.3 billion in sales so far this year. So business is booming for advisors. If you've never worked with a travel agent, travel advisor before, we have plenty of ways to connect with them up on TravelPulse.com. Check it out. I would strongly encourage you to work with a travel advisor if you've never have before. If you have and you love your advisor, give them a little shout. It's the holiday time this year, so hit them up, let them know you love them, and get your travel plans rolling for 2020.
Most definitely. And, working with travel advisors, and I know I've seen out there some reports about millennial travelers working with advisors more than ever. And that goes back to, and it's what people always attribute that to, because people are surprised. They're like, wow, we thought like travel agents were extinct. Travel agents were only used by boomers, Gen Xers. They're completely out of the equation for millennials, and it's not true. And I think it all gets attributed to millennials like you and I, Eric. We know how much BS there is out there on the internet, and not even just absolute like absurdity out there when you're trying to find stuff, but the amount that gets thrown in your face. There are so many sources you can go to. There are so many different places you can try and find information, gather all the stuff, whether it's the flights, the accommodations, the transfers, all this stuff. And millennials, as a lot of you listening to this may know, we're inherently lazy and want to take some shortcuts. Let's be honest. I'm not.
That's the stereotype for us. And while some of us do fit into that role, others are not. So, I mean, it's hit or miss. You got lazy boomers too. You got lazy Gen Xers.
Most definitely.
I got to defend us millennials here a little bit. But you could defend. There are several lazy of them.
You could defend the millennials, Eric. I'm going to take the other side. I am not one of the craziest people about the millennial generation, even though it is my own. I am such a curmudgeon-y old man yelling people get off my lawn, and I'm only 27 years old, so there is that going for me. However, I will say that, yes, we want to cut out as much work as possible, and you can do that by going to a travel advisor. We talked about in our last episode how the common myth is that you have to pay extra for a travel agent services. Tammy Levent did mention that if there's an agent charging you money, unless it's a really crazy itinerary or a lot of moving parts to your trip, you should never have to do that, because agents bring in their money based on the commission of the places they're booking for you to go. They make, just as Eric was talking about, a huge amount of commissions come to travel agents through booking cruises. Most cruises, I think 70 or 75%, are booked by travel agents or travel advisors, whatever word you would like to use, or whatever is the term being used nowadays. It's kind of wishy-washy right now. But most agents will book with cruises. They get the commissions from the different hotel places. So anyone that's on the fence about using one, we highly recommend it. I have, since I started working at TravelPulse about 3 years ago now. They cut so much legwork out of it, and they also are so personally connected to people at the places that you're staying. They have like an inside scoop and an insight into stuff and connections that you would never get by going to Expedia, TripAdvisor, wherever. They don't care about what you're actually doing. They just want to convert you. They're not going to, if there's any issue that comes up, Expedia is not going to help you. A lot of these places are rarely going to help you. You can have that direct line to a travel advisor that will contact the sales manager at the resort you're staying at, and they will give you the ultimate experience. I've seen it enough on a lot of these trips, and our agent we're bringing on today is going to talk about that a little bit as well, just how we were in Antigua. So that's my spiel on using the advisors for you, Eric.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just, we need to be better travelers in 2020. And I think using a travel advisor, agent, professional, consultant, whatever you want to call it, they're the pros pro. So hit them up, connect with them. They'll help you with your travel in 2020, because it's going to remain strong. You know, travel is not going anywhere. So per that ASSA study that I mentioned earlier, it also touched on spending. So overall, travelers anticipate spending $6,772 on travel in 2020, which is a 10% increase over the past 12 months. So just some trends I kind of see, I think will take place in 2020 in travel. Social media tourism, that's not going away. It's going to be there for a long time. If you have great photos and great video, you're going to hook people in that way. It's the nature of where we're at as a society right now, I'd say. Microcations is another one I can see. I think is going to be bigger in 2020 and in this next decade too. And that's just, taking a shorter vacation, if you will, just kind of like that Friday to Monday, take Friday and Monday off of work and get yourself a long extended weekend, refresh, recharge, get back to the grind of the daily. And solo travel is another one that could be blowing up. If you look to Google's recent trends and destinations for insight, solo travel is one that they see a lot of people searching for more and wanting more information about. And then obviously we mentioned it too, cruising is not going away. You have a lot of cruise lines building new ships coming up in 2020 and beyond, a lot of new destinations, then itineraries that they're putting out, and the Bahamas too, which really needs your business. A lot of cruise lines doing their own, already have their own specific private islands, and a lot of them are doing even newer ones. Disney is in the process of one too. So cruising as well. Speaking of those Google trends, one thing that kind of surprised me when I took a look at that was beach holidays are actually trending down. So hats off to you travelers for changing it up and exploring new places. I'm a big fan of Go Global. So make that more of your travel plans for 2020. Experience the world. Don't just go to the same beach over and over. If that's your thing, totally cool. If you love the same beach over and over and that's your comfort spot and that's how you really get the most out of your travel, then by all means, stick with that. Do that. But,
wild though, with because when I was in Antigua or even any Caribbean destination, those beaches there are so beautiful, just primed for beauty and Instagram fame. I mean, and after going there, I'm like, how can I possibly go from coming back here to going to do the family week vacation in Ocean City, New Jersey, or Wildwood, New Jersey? It's like, how do you go back to the Jersey Shore after experiencing places like that? Nothing against the Jersey Shore. I grew up in New Jersey, go there every Summer.
You don't. I think you just move away from New Jersey, Dan. I think that's what you got to do.
I mean, I don't blame anybody for wanting to do that. I mean, I should have done that a long time ago. And I mean, I can say this because I'm from New Jersey, and anybody else from New Jersey will probably agree with me on that. But I just like going down, sitting like at the Jersey Shore. I'm sure it's like that in many other destinations along the East Coast as well, beaches and stuff, where you go and you're literally on top of other people, just like not the kind of people you want to spend a day with on the beach. You know, you go down to the Caribbean, you got most of these beaches you have like to yourself, or at least a good like 20-foot radius from the next person. And they could be some beautiful European people you're surrounded by, not these animals coming out of New York and Philadelphia with you. I mean, I know what that's like, and I'm sure a lot of people will know what that's like. So I don't know how you could possibly go back to that after experiencing the globe, but I will agree with you on what you were talking about there too with microcations. I'm a big fan of microcations, a 4-day, 3-day weekend, whatever you want to do. I talked to so many people that have been to more countries than they have been states in the United States, which is insane to me. And I'm like, I want to see, because this country has so many, offering so many things to do, and seeing the globe is awesome. But you can knock out, and even cheaper, like microcations, you can get some, do multiple ones of those in a year. As much as you want to save and splurge on a big trip to, Bora Bora or the Maldives or something like that, and you go like once, and then you can't have enough money to travel anywhere for another year or two, you can do a ton of these microcations throughout the year on these long weekends and stuff, where it's a nice refresh, recharge for the following week, and split those up around holidays. I just did that in Durham. You do that down in Florida, even go out west a little bit. Been out to LA to do things like that too. I mean, really good offerings to be able to do stuff. I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah, and it kind of takes me back to my school days when you had that Friday, the super long weekend, school holidays or whatever. I really loved those the most. And, we would take some trips from that too. So being a millennial just kind of brings me back, takes me back, gets a little nostalgia there. So speaking of millennial, though, our next trusted travel advisor, Dan, that we're going to talk to is a millennial. You just went to the Millennial Travel Forum in Antigua. We're going to talk about that and the 2020 air travel trip tips and insight as well. So, Dan?
Thanks, Eric. Yep, and we have another trusted travel advisor on the line for us here today, as we do this with a new segment of every episode where we're going to bring in a advisor that we personally know and have worked with throughout the industry. And today we have a guest, Erica Drake, on the line with us. Erica, how you doing?
Hey, guys. How you doing? I'm doing great.
Great. Glad to have you on. I know we spent some time...
Thank you.
I know we spent some time together a week or two ago now when we were in Antigua for the Millennial Travel Forum. But why don't you give our listeners a little intro to where you're from, what your agency is, and what you do in the travel industry?
Yeah, so essentially I'm the CEO and owner of American Grit Travel. I'm located in Chicago, Illinois, and I've been in the business for about 7 years in travel myself. So, of course, it was definitely an honor to be joining the Millennial Travel Forum in Antigua just a couple of weeks ago, as you said.
Awesome. Yeah, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, and what's the name of your agency again?
American Grit Travel.
American Grit Travel. Awesome. Yeah, and I know we had you down there along with a dozen or so other hand-selected millennial travel agents for the Millennial Travel Forum in Antigua, the first one we've done in Antigua. I wanted to see if you wanted to touch on that as a destination a little bit for some people. I know we had a heavy involvement with one of the main companies that has 5 different accommodation selections of resorts on the island. What are some of the biggest takeaways that you had from Antigua as a destination, whether it related to the island in general or some of the properties and some things overall like that we did that you liked?
So overall, Antigua, obviously I had never been there before, so I didn't really know what to expect. I kept my mind kind of open in terms of the destination itself. Upon arrival, automatically at the airport, one of the biggest things is Americans to feel as if they're welcomed at the destination. They want to know, okay, we're welcome. We feel safe. We feel warm and friendly with the people that are around us. And I immediately felt that as soon as I arrived off the plane in the Antigua airport, from the airport workers to our transfer company, all the way down to the hotel. I mean, even the maids and some of the restaurant workers, they were all so friendly and they were all so appreciative over the fact that we were staying on their island. that it made us feel so warm and welcome, like I said, everywhere we had gone. And to me, that's very important. It's one of the things I took away from the island.
Great. And
another one, I would have to say some of the highlights, as I used to be a chef in Chicago, food and beverage is very important to me and my clients. A lot of them are foodies. So the fact that we got to experience sheer rocks was, I would have to say, the cherry on top of the sundae. Just overlooking the sunset and having that private dinner. You have the opportunity to stay at the Cocoa Bay property if you wanted to, with your own private plunge pool. Like the entire environment, of course, Vogue rated it the #1 most romantic Instagrammed restaurant in the Caribbean. So of course, everybody has to love it. But overall, it just was an absolutely breathtaking restaurant to experience. And on the other flip side, we went to an amazing fish fry on Friday night, and it was at the dockyards. And just to intermingle with the locals and to drink rum punch and eat fish that was just caught that morning was just absolutely amazing. And being in Chicago, we don't get the freshest seafood. So it was really nice and unique to experience.
That's great. Yeah, and I'm actually upset I missed part of that. The last day there, because I had to fly out because of the different types of flight things to get me back to Philly. I had to leave Friday afternoon. So when you guys went to Sheer Rocks and then the fish fry, I missed out on both of those experiences. But I saw the photos, and anyone who's listening that wants to see these photos from Erica and many of our other advisors that were with us, the hashtag is MTF Antigua. It's all across Instagram, Facebook, anywhere you can see those photos. And I can tell just from the photos. I know the photos won't do it justice, and I missed it in person, but it did look absolutely incredible. And I think with Antigua, I guess if you want to touch a little bit on this too, whenever I mention to people, like they ask me, oh, where's the best place I can go right now? Or where have you been recently that you recommend? And if I mention Antigua, a couple of the first responses I've gotten back was, well, isn't that really like ultra luxury and like really expensive, like compared to other Caribbean islands? As far as like their rates and stuff go, would you say that it's like more expensive than others? Is it kind of in the ballpark? Or even if it is expensive, would people be getting like, an incredible value for what they're paying for?
So that's a great question to tap in on. I always explain it as if it's still off the beaten path in a lot of ways for it being an island. It's not really talked about because it's not really seen as a quote unquote all-inclusive island that a lot of Americans like to travel to. I feel as if certain islands that are a bit closer to the United States get tapped into a lot more. However, Antigua is very unique. You do have to take a connecting flight in some cities, unfortunately, with Chicago for right now. I'm hoping they'll get a nonstop, but it's worth the one-stop flight to get out there. Just like we had mentioned about Sheer Rocks and Fish Fry, the unique parts in the island that you can actually visit, certain islands that are cheaper to go to, you can't really explore off the island. There's really either nothing to do or it's not particularly safe in certain areas. So in a way, we recommend try and go to an island that you can explore off and, explore the culture and don't just sit at the resort. And Antigua, I have to say, is definitely my #1 option, to the point that I was actually in Antigua and booked my clients. They're there in Antigua right now as we speak, actually, indulging and exploring themselves. They went to Cloggies. They went to Sheer Rocks for their anniversary. So, like, the pictures alone, they sell themselves. And the island just kind of carries the rest of the way that us advisors can't really tap into, that we don't have control over. So Antigua, in some ways, it can be a bit more expensive on the island, depending upon what resort you choose, but that's with any island. If we're speaking of Hammock Cove, which of course was an amazing elite island resort, I would say it's a bit on the higher end. Definitely worth it for the privacy, the private plunge pool. But if you're speaking of Pineapple Beach Club that I got to enjoy, that was a barefoot luxury experience, and it was definitely really inexpensive. Just pricing it out, I don't really like to put price points on, depending upon where people are flying out of. However, I would say it's valued very well for the fact it's adults only, all inclusive, and you are beachfront. So rest assured, you're getting your own little privatized island instead of a massive resort that alternate islands tend to offer.
Exactly. And that's something that Eric and I were talking about earlier in the episode here about that privacy with these beaches. I mean, we were at so many different beaches across this island, and specifically at Pineapple Beach. I walked right outside my room and I was like, I literally hear the waves crashing all night very softly. And so that's such a relaxing thing to have. But you can literally walk out the back patio and you're on a beach in the middle of paradise and you don't have people crowding on top of you. It definitely seems like it's an untapped kind of destination. There's a lot of British and European families and people that are traveling there, adults and stuff. But I think like what you were saying is it's kind of like untapped and it doesn't make its way into the news a lot because it's very tranquil, it's very quiet, easygoing kind of place. All the places you see in the news are obviously the ones that if it bleeds, it leads kind of stories. The DER, the Mexicos of the world, like things like that are the ones that are blowing up in the faces of people. In Antigua, they were promoting how they're one, if not the safest island in the Caribbean. They only had 3 murders this past year. I think they mentioned a lot of those were domestic kind of issues, so it's not like anything happening to tourists. So that's definitely a very big selling point for them, for Antigua specifically. So I guess now to transition a little bit out of just Antigua, and obviously you want to move as many travelers there as possible because it's an awesome place to experience. What are some of your tips as we head in here to 2020? This is going to be our last episode of 2019. Some of the things or tips, pieces of advice, anything that you would say to travelers looking to make a move in 2020 to go somewhere. What would you have to say to them?
I would definitely say, besides the cliche of trusting it up to an expert who lives, eats, and breathes travel, 12 plus hours a day looking into flights and hotels and the best destinations, know that you deserve a personalized vacation. It shouldn't be cookie cutter. It shouldn't be clicking and just a booking number for yourself. I mean, this is your investment. Americans typically don't have a lot of travel time. Actually, we really only have about 15 days a year to take advantage of travel. So really want to understand that you deserve a personalized vacation, and that just because the internet states that it's 4-star and perfect for couples doesn't mean that it's perfect for you. And that's, I feel, where us as experts come into play in terms of planning your next trip.
Definitely. And that's something else that Eric and I were talking about earlier as well with using a travel advisor. When you book through Expedia or one of these large OTAs, Kayak or Travelocity, whatever, you're a number on a spreadsheet to them in a lot of cases. I don't want to speak for the masses on that, but I can definitely say that's how it is. And they just put up some photos, some bullet points of stuff, and they don't know personally what you are specifically into, looking for, whether it's the people you're bringing, where you're coming from, things you want to do, the atmosphere. And a lot of those things can be answered for you and handpicked and selected for you by using a travel advisor like yourself, which will actually care for where you're investing your money as opposed to just an online booking engine just wants to get your money. So definitely there.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And not to even mention that when you do book with us, we're creating a profile of your likes and your dislikes, the places that you've been to, the airlines that you care to fly with. We're creating that personalized profile so that the next time that you come back to us, you don't have to repeat yourself. I know you as your client. I know your family, who you like to travel with, where you like to go, so that automatically that next destination, we've already got a platform set up to make that an even better trip than the first.
Definitely. And that's great. And before I toss it back to Eric to ask you about advice for travel advisors listening out there, since it's a rarity that we have a former chef on the podcast here as well, especially from Chicago, which is, I believe you had told me in Antigua that you guys were named like one of the top restaurant or foodie cities in the country, overtaking, I believe, New York. So
we did finally.
Oh, that's incredible, and I've been there a couple of times and have been able to eat and divulge into the stuff. So, what are some of the top recommendations you would have for people visiting Chicago, food-wise, or places they have to go, or even not the touristy kind of places? Are you more into like those very touristy, bigger kind of things, or is there like a small kind of untapped into place that you would recommend people go to?
Well, of course, everybody knows that Chicago's known for pizza, and the question is where to go. I'll suggest Lou Malnati's is definitely the best to get the pizza. Some of the best views, I have to say, you'll find of the city are going to be in particular at hotels because they've got access to the top floor lounges. The Wit is a fabulous hotel to get cocktails at. London House is very swanky, a little bit of a younger crowd. It's quite wonderful. And then Drake Hotel, of course, not because of my last name, but just because of the staple of the city. For a bit of an elder crowd, I would have to say beautiful views of the lake.
Also, now you're coming on to plug your Drake Hotel, huh? What is your stake in this hotel?
I had to throw that in there,
So, Eric, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, now I'm really hungry. Now I really want some deep dish pizza.
Yeah.
So that's good. Yes, we are recording this right at lunchtime, so food is on the brain. That's fantastic. That's big for Chicago. I think a lot of people don't really think about them too much as a food beyond pizza. So it's really good to expand the palate there and treat your taste buds to more than just pizza when you visit Chicago. So one thing you did mention about the MTF, I thought was great. It's already led to bookings. That's what the forum is all about, education and leading to bookings. So that's great that you have clients that are so spontaneous to book that trip right then while you were there, and they're already there now. One thing about being spontaneous, though, is finding a good flight deal. So what advice would you give to travel agents, travelers in general, too, on just booking air travel, advice for travel agents when their clients come to them and ask, oh, how can I find a cheap flight? Because I think that's one thing that every traveler wants to have is a cheap flight. And it may not always be possible, but it is doable, especially when you work with an advisor. So
yeah. And that is a great question. First, I mean, one thing I do that I kind of address is cheap flight is what we all want. However, we don't want to experience it, to be honest with you. Nobody really wants cheap service and poor quality seats with nothing to be offered. So I try and sway my clients into, okay, let's take a look at your flexibility in dates, first of all, because a day or two can honestly fluctuate a flight hundreds of dollars. In particular, when we're talking about family vacations over summer dates, holidays, travel, those dates in particular can fluctuate hundreds to thousands of dollars. So even with my clients that were traveling, within 3 days of me quoting out their trip, I was taking a look into variants of 18th to the 19th of December. And that's really what you have to do, is to take time into researching, okay, if we fly out of a bit of a major hub, we know that we're going to save a bit more money because smaller airports tend to charge a bit more in taxes as well as the fare of the ticket. So do yourself a favor, put some research into the flights, allow yourself some flexibility because a day or two could definitely change. So try not to be concrete with your dates. And then, of course, understand that you might not want the cheapest airline because they might not offer everything that's included that you would want. So try and take a look at the airlines that are best for you. And of course, when you book those airlines, always sign up for frequent flyer, because that's a free program and you can always get miles off of every flight that you've earned. And I highly suggest that for clients.
Yeah, that's great. I think that goes back to the personalization of using a travel advisor and getting it personalized for you. So
yeah, that's great. And I think a lot of these tips can be used by both travelers and advisors. Obviously, on the traveler side, there's a lot of things that vary, a lot of different pieces. Unless you're, a self-made expert on the travel trade and how you move in and out and a lot of things, it's so much easier and better to work with an advisor because there's just so much information out there now. And coming to somebody like Erica can really streamline a lot of things for you, and also have somebody that personally knows you and what you would like to do, whether, you don't want to be taking like maybe you're not the type of person to take a 12 or a 14-hour flight with Frontier somewhere, or a Spirit Airlines kind of flight. So exactly. cheaper may not be better for you. And especially if you're talking different hubs and all that type of stuff. Glad with all the different tips you're able to advise people on here. It's great. So, thanks again for coming on. I think we're going to wrap here. So everybody can find Erica Drake on social media at American Grit Travel. And see all the different happenings that we had in Antigua and also beyond and all the different things. Is there anything you specialize in, Erica, or some people that you'd love to work with into 2020, or where they can find you and stuff like that?
Yeah, so thanks so much for asking. I actually specialize in couples and romance, so honeymoon, anniversary, destination wedding, and in particular multi-city trips, such as like bucket list vacations, where you're wanting to group multiple cities together, but don't quite know how you can coordinate trains, transfers, hotels, and I can do all of that for you, of course, planning it and putting it into one package. So you can find me at americangrittravel.com. I'm just doing some website updates, so you might not be able to get through right this second, but it'll be live in a couple days, the latest. Or you could find me on Facebook as well at American Grit Travel, as well as Instagram. And of course, I do always look out for our first responders and our military. So if you happen to have any past service or active and or our first responders, such as firefighters or police, I would love to offer you a few upgrades or discounts to assist you in your travels as well.
Well, yeah, if that doesn't get anyone on the hook to want to travel with those different types of incentives you offer and the different types of things you do, that's an awesome way to get into it, and especially right around now, I'm booking the 2020. So, yeah, I'm hoping that it'll get people out there and out the door and want to get into more traveling. So thank you for coming on and talking with us today.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Erica. And if you are a travel advisor, travel agent, and would like to join us on the podcast, hit us up at podcast@travelpulse.com.
Yeah, we would love to hear from you and have multiple different types of advisors that specialize in different things, even all over the country. Obviously, everybody does things differently. Eric has a great niche of people that she serves in Chicago, a lot of first responders, like she mentioned. So Erica is doing it well, and we'd love to hear from others. So shoot us an email there, and I think based on what Eric and I have been talking about a lot in this episode, there's a lot of tips and advice for other advisors and travelers out there as well. And I think what the overall message we can take from this as we close out 2019 on this podcast as the final episode before we make our way into 2020 is we should all do something to be a little bit better of a traveler in 2020. We can all do our parts. There's different things you can do, whether you're on the ground, out in the ocean, in the air. One simple, very simple thing that I think, and I'm hoping Eric agrees with me on this one, that everybody can do, especially most definitely in the skies, don't recline your seat. That's the first thing that we can do in 2020. Can we just stop reclining seats on the plane? You're reclining the seat and you're immediately taking away the 5 inches of space that the person behind you has to give, especially if they even have a tray table open. I've had this happen where I can't even open a laptop to do some work, anything like that. As much as I try and strive to pay extra for an exit row or a main cabin seat or something like that, I just see anybody that reclines their seat as soon as they turn that seatbelt light off, or as soon as the plane gets into gets it to its cruising altitude, and people just throw that recline back so heavy. There's no bigger of a dick move that you can pull than that. So let's start there. I am team no recline. How about you, Eric?
100% on your side, Dan. Team no recline, no seat back, tables upright. Let's be real. Let's be better travelers, as Dan mentioned, and as we've tried to discuss throughout the show as well. So there are actually some airlines that may in the future one day charge you if you want to lean your seat back. So I'm for that if people want to do that. Personally, I would just love if you just don't recline at all. Get your first class ticket so you can sit up there in luxury and have that extra space to do that.
How awesome would it be if they charged you to recline your seat, and you can't recline it unless you swipe your credit card, and whenever you swipe that credit card, recline your seat, whether it's for a given time period like they do with Wi-Fi, like for an hour, for a full flight, half of that revenue goes to the person behind you. That's what I'm going to just throw out there. I might run for mayor of the town and just try and implement it as a nationwide policy amongst the airlines. I'll fall on that grenade if that's something people want to do, but yeah, people, if they're going to charge extra for that, or just be a gentleman and buy a more expensive seat so you have more leg room or something so that you don't have to crush the dreams and hopes and souls of the people behind you. That'd be appreciated.
Absolutely.
So that is how we think you can make an immediate impact in 2020 as travelers. And we have a lot coming in 2020 here in the podcast as we get things rolling. This is only the second time Eric and I have really exchanged this type of banter and this type of format before. So if you have anything you want to be, anything topic-wise you want talked about, or if you have any opinions or responses to anything, I already got a response after our first episode. I forget the name of the person who posted it, but she said, I don't want Dan Callahan, I want Mark Murphy. And I know that's what everybody out there is thinking inside, and she put it out on Facebook, and I appreciate that. I don't want Dan Callahan, I want Mark Murphy. I hear that enough.
That's exactly how she sounds too. I think that she recorded a post and put it up online, right, Dan? That's exactly how she sounds.
That's exactly 100%. I hear that same line from my friends, family, fiance. Everybody says they don't want Dan Callahan, they want Mark Murphy. But you're stuck with the Dan Callahan now. Mark Murphy is out there I think he's in Mexico enjoying the holidays right now. So we will publish his address online if you want to go check out his RV. I am partially kidding about that. I think he would be open to the greetings from random people around the country. But who knows what is going to be going on after the holidays here for him. But yes, you're with Dan Callahan and Eric Bowman into 2020. Eric, what are we going to talk about more in 2020 topic wise, along with some other stuff that we can tease people about here?
Yeah, absolutely. On the books, we're going to be already planning for wave season and cruising as our general theme for January episode. That'll be coming up. Wave season is a big time to find a lot of deals on cruising. Cruising is a vast, popular way of traveling, and it's not going anyway anytime soon. So we'll be talking about that. We'll talk a little bit on spring travel, summer travel, fall travel, obviously throughout the year, get into more specific topics like diving into microcations, all-inclusive resorts, culinary travel, family travel, luxury travel, eco-friendly travel, as we try to be better travelers as well. Those will be just general themes that we kind of mix in throughout the year. Obviously, making sure to still talk about what's trending in the news and give you insights and deals and tips along the way.
Great. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that, sprinkling in all the different types of things that we have happening in between. So, we look forward to 2020 and seeing you there. Make sure you share this podcast with anybody out there you think it would be great to listen to, whether it's a fellow advisor, traveler. Share it across your face space or my book or instant chat or whatever you got. And we will be looking forward to seeing you in 2020. Have a pleasant holiday season and New Year, everybody. We will sign it off for now and see you in 2020.